Hey guys, welcome back to Toy Soldier Tales. It's Alan. Just wanted to say thank you for tuning in for today's podcast episode. It's our first one, so this is not going to be the smoothest production you've ever seen. There was a few audio issues with Steve's mic cutting out every now and again, and James' girlfriend cleaning in the background. But we're not going to hold it against them. We're here because we love Warhammer and we love the community. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Toy Soldier Tales podcast, episode 1. For those that are new, this is a wargaming YouTube channel focused mainly on Warhammer Fantasy. For those that aren't new, I just want to say a big thank you for sticking with us. There have been no new battle reports yet, as we're staying COVID safe and sticking to government guidelines, which means I can't go out and meet anyone and play battles. And if I can't play battles, I can't record battles. So sorry there's not been any battle reports, but we're all suffering together. And, if we all stick to what we need to do, then I'm sure it'll be over soon. We did try and record this episode at the back end of last year, but my missus decided to go into labour. So right in the first 20 minutes of recording the episode, so I had to discard that footage, and that was that. But I have a new beautiful baby boy now, and he's doing amazing. So thank you very much for those who have stuck with us. Today's episode, we've got Steve.
Hello. And
we've also got James.
Hello.
They've both appeared on the channel before. Steve was using his Wood Elves, and James was using his Orcs and Goblins. And both videos have proved very popular with our supporters. And so we've got them on today to talk about the Triple Crown. Now, we talk about Triple Crown a lot in our post video interviews. And it's a very popular format. It's probably the most popular tournament format, I would say, in the country at the moment. There's a lot of tournaments that tend to use the Triple Crown format, whether it's on 1 day or 2 days. The guys who put it together have done an excellent job, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean we're not going to criticize it in some areas. We are hobbyists and we love to criticize things. But today's episode, we're going to focus on 2 races. We're going to be talking about Orcs and Goblins and Bretonnians. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the Orcs and Goblins comp scores. And I'm basically going to read them out, and we're going to say whether we agree with them or don't agree with them. And then we'll move into some army lists and talk about that. Right, you guys ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the first one, Night Goblin Squig gobbers may be taken as a rare choice in an Orc and Goblin army. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I love those gobbers.
Fun.
Yeah. +3 comp points. Remember, there's a maximum of 10. Everyone starts on 0. There's a maximum of 10 comp points, and you can go into as many negatives as you want, but plus points are better. +3 competition points if your army contains only goblins. Fair, not fair?
Yeah, it's about right, I think so.
Only goblins. And +5 points if your army contains only orcs. So
I think that's quite a lot.
Yeah, I would say that's quite high, simply because most of the key units and stuff that seems to be getting later on is in the orc bit. So you're not losing a massive amount. I think the only thing you're really losing out on is a Doom Diver.
Yeah, so
apart from the standard Goblin units.
So to clarify for people who don't know, War Machines classes Goblin units unless you take an Orc Bully, and if you take an Orc Bully, they count as an Orc unit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it does mean that you still have access to all your Rock Lobsters. It means you still got access to your Spear Chuckers. You can't take one on a Doom Diver, can you?
No, that's right.
No. But, it means you still got your artillery pieces to take down those pesky monsters. you know, you may be losing out on some chaff, i.e. you don't get your Spider Riders, you don't get your Wolf Riders or anything like that, but, you know, there's still some really hard-hitting stuff in the Orcs bit, which we'll talk about when we get to the army list, mainly Savage Orc Biggins.
Yeah. I think the +5 is, because if you don't take the War Machines, Orcs get another +2, which you're about to say in a second, for no War Machines. So by simply just taking no War Machines, no Goblins, you start on +7, which, like, nothing else in the game gets any that level of pluses. I think there's a reason you don't see loads of mass Orc hordes, because you just probably wouldn't be that good and it'd probably be very slow. But, like, if you just wanted to take Orcs and just walk forwards into people, you could end up at +10 pretty quick.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Let's continue going down the composition points. So just so people we've already spoken about War Machines with Orc Bullies counts as Orcs. Mangler Squigs, Trolls, and Giants can count as either. So you can still get a Mangler Squig, which from talking to people and playing against them, Mangler Squigs are scary. And if I'm ever playing like my High Elves or anything with any shooting, I kill those Mangler Squigs like early, because you don't want to get them doing any damage to you. So the fact that they can count as Orcs is pretty tough as well. And also Arachnarok Spiders, Squig Herds, Squig Hoppers, they all count as Goblins, which is fair enough. You know, they are Goblin themed units.
Yeah.
Okay then. So next point, -1 composition point for every Black Orc character you have more than units of Black Orcs. So what do we think? So what that means... Sorry, I was just going to say...
I was just going to say, I think that's fair, because you're basically taking them to quell animosity, which is one of the downsides of the Orcs and Goblins army list, thematic, and we to get around that, then yes, should be penalised for doing it. It takes away some of it. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's quite thematic to say you take Black Orcs, you have a Black Orc hero. So it sort of works with like the theme that if you've got loads of Black Orcs, it makes sense if there's a boss there. But yeah, I hate animosity, so I always take Black Orcs. So I do understand why, because I always take them because they're good. So it probably should be a -point.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It does fit. Next one is maybe a controversial one. -1 if you have more than 6 fanatics.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Personally, I think you should get a -2 if you have like over 10 or something like that. Because I think with fanatics, you either go big or you don't hardly take any at all. At least that's my experience. So, if I'm playing Goblins, I usually take 8 or 9 at the minimum.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really, you know, when you get to 6, on, and there's no extra penalty.
Yeah, I think if you had like a varying level of negatives, like you said, so it's like -1 if you take 6. If you take more than 10, it's -2. I think like a varying level of negatives. Like fanatics. Anyone who's played a lot of Warhammer, you know, fanatics. It's not really about like damage. It's just them upsetting your charges and stuff like that. I think they can cause a lot of like, you know, headache. You know, if there are fanatics, and if you're playing against an experienced Orc and Goblin player, then they can cause a bit of havoc with, you know, your manoeuvring and stuff like that. So.
Oh yeah, I mean 6. That's potentially, if you know how to play fanatics, that could be 12 d6 armor piercing hits on a unit that's charging in.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, and I don't want to do that.
I think -1's about right, I'd say, to be honest. I feel like if you're getting to the close of like 12 or 15, it means you're having to spend a lot of points on Goblins just to get that many fanatics. So I feel like when you get to that point, maybe you there's probably an optimum point, probably about 9, which I'd say is worth -1. So I'd say -1 for more than 6 is probably about right.
Okay. Right, next one. -1 per unit of Savage Orc Biggin models of 30+. This is increased to -2 if there's a lucky shrunken head in the army.
Yeah, I think they're the best unit in the Orcs and Goblins book.
So
I think that's fair.
If you're gonna take, and and James has this in his army, so we'll talk about that in a bit. But if you take the Savage Orc unit, 30+ models, Biggins, that's -1 off the bat for that. You're obviously gonna take Lucky Shrunken Head on the Shaman, so that's -2. But also in Triple Crown comp, for those who don't know, I'll put a link down to the composition rules pack for those who want to check out after or during this podcast. But if your unit is over, I think, is it 450 points to 600 points, you get -1. And then if it's 600 points to 700 points, it's -2. And then if it's 700 points to
750, I think.
750. So, like, a big unit of Savage Orc Biggins, let's say 40 with like full command is what, James, is like 600 points, just under 600 points, something like that.
No, it's only just like 450.
Like, yeah, but you get it's -1 is what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah.
So what it is actually is it for that unit, it's like -4, straight away without anything else into it. So there is quite a bit of. It's a great unit and fantastic unit, and we'll talk about that later on. But I think I agree with those, because there is the additional negatives for taking a very expensive unit as well. I say a very expensive unit. I'm the kind of guy who plays high elves, so I know all about that.
The only thing I think about that comp is, like, I don't know where they decided which units they think are more than like 29 models. It becomes -1. Like, why isn't it just -1 per unit of Savage Orc Biggins?
Yeah, I think it's because like I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I would say it's based upon experience, but also units. Well, how good they are, can depend on how many models are in that unit. So they reach a level of the words escape me, but they reach a level of effectiveness based on a certain amount of models. If you've only got like 20 Savage Orcs or 25 Savage Orcs, that's not going to be a very big threat. It's not even a horde. Where as soon as you put 30 in, you've got the 3 ranks, it's going to start causing more and more damage. So I think that's probably why they've done it. If you're watching Triple Crown, guys, and you want to appear on the podcast to defend yourselves, then, or completely slate our army lists, then please reach out. I would love for you guys to come on. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. -2 if you have 2 Doom Divers.
Yeah, I think it's fair. It's consistent with all the other War Machine comp throughout the different armies.
Yeah, I think it just stops you spamming it as well. I did always think, why isn't it just -1 per 1? Why only -2 when you get to 2? But I do like the way you can just take 1 and not be penalised. But if you take loads of the same thing, you do get penalised.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, like, people might notice when I write my arm list, unless I'm going Highlander, which means you only take 1 unit of everything, then I like to double up on a lot of my units to increase their level of effectiveness. So it's like, if I take a cannon, that cannon might, to like snipe dragons or snipe giants or anything like that, it might not happen. Whereas if I take 2 cannons, the level of effectiveness have gone up. It's more likely to happen, obviously, because you've doubled your chances. So I think that's why they say, well, 1, 2, however, is quite tough. And I hate Goblin Doom Divers. I think they're great, but I hate playing against them. I like playing MSU, multiple small units, and having a Doom Diver, having a Goblin fly into my unit of Silver Helms, fly into my unit of Shadow Warriors, fly into my unit of Chaos Knights is not nice. So
they are very accurate with the redirect as well. So it's really good.
This one should be quite easy. after the previous discussion. -2 for 2 rock lobsters.
Yeah.
Yep. Same comments, really. Yeah.
-1 per mangler squig.
Yep, I think that's fair.
Yeah, they're so
because-
underpointed for what they are.
Yeah, against some armies who don't have the ready tools to remove them. I'm talking like Warriors of Chaos, etc. With lack of shooting. Some demon armies can have the same problem.
Yeah,
That they can wreak absolute havoc.
You have to. That's why you have to have like chaff units that can just fly into them and just. Well, the squig doesn't even die, does it? The mangler squig, if you run into it, does
If
it?
you move it,
Yeah,
into
it does. You sit on it.
So I think you just have to move into them and just say, right, I am going to sacrifice my Werewolf Chaos. 30 points if you're lucky with Chaos Hounds, but normally it'd be like Marauders or something with 90 points. It's like, I'm going to sacrifice my 90-point unit to kill your 65-point unit or something like that. So it's not great. Next one, -2 for Grimgar in Con of Beasts. That's from the end times. So
I don't actually know his rules particularly well.
No, I don't.
I know he's got an extra strength and an extra toughness. I've used normal Grimgor quite a lot just because I love the concept of Grimgor.
yeah.
But -2 is quite a lot, so I'm interested to see what his rules say.
He's not a lot of points, and he has like a bound spell. I think he has like the Wizard's Wild Form bound spell, which is really good because it means that he can buff him. It's a spell that Orcs and Goblins don't have access to, so you've just opened up like another Law of Magic. Wizard's Wild Form, probably one of the best spells in the Law of Beasts, and it goes right. All of a sudden, Grimgor is already hard as nails, and his unit of Black Orcs is now Strength 5, Toughness 5. So he's quite beastly. He's very, very tough character, and he's not too many points. So I can imagine why, especially seeing as you can take him and a cheap level 4 wizard in your points allowance, can make it quite powerful. Right then, so that's all the negatives for the Orcs and Goblins. We'll quickly run through the positives. So +2 if your army contains no war machines. We spoke about that earlier. Orcs and Goblins war machines are some of the best war machines in the game because of how many points they are. Yeah, they're unreliable, but they're dirt cheap. So I think that's quite fair to say you get +2 comp for no war machines.
Yeah. It's consistent across the races.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have never seen a unit of this next one in any tournament. +1 for a unit of Arrow Boys, for your first unit of Arrow Boys. Anyone seen Arrow Boys in recent years?
I've got some models from 20 years ago. They're not getting painted anytime soon.
No.
Nah, it's why you get +1. It's +1. You can take a unit of 10. It's like 10 the smaller unit size.
Yeah, you can probably take 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's that? It'll be like 60 points or something. 60 points +1 comp. Great. First unit of 20 Orc Boys. You don't tend to see Orc Boys anymore because you've either got big uns, Savage Orcs, or you spend your core points on chaff like Wolf Riders or Spider Riders or Goblins with Fanatics. So Orc Boys, really tend to see them.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I mean,
+1.
it's consistent with a lot of other races like Dwarf Warriors and things, which you get +1 for.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's not the best choice in the world in terms of core compared to all the other core options. Yeah.
I don't agree with this next one. +1 for the first unit of Goblin Spider Riders. I don't think you should get any pluses for Spider Riders because those guys are some of the most annoying fast cavalry in the game.
See, this is where I disagree with you. Because they're more points than Goblins. By like 20 points for like a unit of 5 of them. And they're a lot slower, and they don't have light armor.
But they can also move over any terrain.
Yeah. And they get poisoned attacks.
Yeah. I understand them. Like, I take a unit every time because they're +1, so I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
But If there was no comp, I would take Wolf Riders instead.
Yeah, so there is no pluses for Wolf Riders.
Yeah.
And yeah, Wolf Riders, they get the light armor, they get the movement 9, which is great. I'm not going to lie, Wolf Riders are great for their points. However, hi Gemma. But but I think Spider Riders are really good. So +1 for the first unit. I'd rather put him in. I'd put him in the same bucket as Wolf Riders myself. But
yeah, I do. I know where you're coming from, Jace. They are slower, and their armor save worse. But you know, I've beaten a Soul Grinder with Spider Riders just because you know you get a couple of lucky poisoned hits. You're charging them in the flank or the rear or something, and suddenly you know they could be testing on -1, -2, -3. So it's but Wolf Riders would not be able to do that without the poison. Just gives you that something, and plus you know you can hide them behind impassable terrain, and then just go over it the next turn. They are quite flexible in that regard. So I would even if they didn't have +1 and comp, I would like them.
You know what? I really like the idea of moving over the terrain and stuff. I think terrain's obviously a big part of the game, and the flexibility of that is amazing. For those who play Total War Warhammer, I'm just going to put this as a little side note in. I want Forest Spider Riders and a Ragnarok. Well, I want the Spider Riders to have like siege attacker. For those who don't know the game, what it means is you can't attack walled settlements if you don't have siege equipment or a monster to break down the gates. But for me, Spider Riders have an ability in the game where they can move over anything. So I think if you've got a walled settlement and you attack them with Spider Riders, you should just be able to just climb over the walls and attack them. But anyway, that's for those who play the game. People might understand if they also play Total War Warhammer. Next one. +1 if you have one or more nasty skulkers. Never see them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Because first of all, you've got to take common goblins, which you never see anywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely.
Yep. +1 per unit of snotlings.
Again.
Yeah, it's consistent.
Yeah. You don't see them; they're not very good.
You don't see many swarms, and I think like Tomb Kings, their swarms get pluses. I think Lizardmen, Jungle Swarms get pluses as well, so consistent. +1 per unit of 20 Black Orcs. 20 plus Black Orcs.
I like Black Orcs, but I understand why they're +1.
Yeah, I understand because they're quite over.
They're quite expensive.
Yeah,
and there's no ward save or anything on them, and I think their best armor save is 4+ with shield. So yeah, they can take a lot of damage, can't they? +1 per unit of Orc Boar Boys. Now this doesn't mean Savage Orc Boar Boys. It is just the bog standard Orc Boar Boys. You get +1.
Yeah, and you get +1 for Savage Orc Boar Boys as well.
Oh yeah, that's the next line.
yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were going to say Savage Orc Boar Boys you don't get +1 for, but yeah, you do. +1 for both.
I think it's fair. They don't have a very good save. They're not very good initiative. You still have to add animosity. Figure out they're not particularly cheap. But like, if you took one unit, you probably get a unit for like 120, 130 points. So it's not really terrible for a +1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going all the Orc route, that would be, I was using it as my chaff, but that would be it, you know. Basic unit 5 with absolutely no upgrades whatsoever. Possibly a musician. You know, that's it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I do the same with like Empire. So like a unit of vanilla knights, just like 5 knights. They can cause a little bit of damage if they charge. In the strength 5, you've got 1-up armor save, so they're not going to take any damage from like archers or anything like that. But you know, they're cheap enough that you can use them as a chaff unit. So you know, I feel like the same thing with them. Moving on to Arachnaroks, +1 per Arachnarok, +2 if it has a catchweb shrine on it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're 290 points
Yeah.
per unit. It's a lot compared to most other monsters.
Yeah.
I have one and I love it, and I think it's a great model. But
Yeah, I've
maybe
got
the reason I
two.
use it is because maybe the reason I use it is because I think it's cool rather than I think it's the best unit.
Yeah. I think for those who've watched the channel previously, there's a High Elves versus Orcs and Goblins game, and James actually uses an Ragnarok in that as a defensive line blocker. Some people have commented.
Yeah, it's sort of my style is to run away the whole game in every game I play.
Only a few points left. +1 per giant. In previous years, this was +2 per giant. They've changed it to +1. I'm surprised by that because Slaughter Brutes and I think what was it, the Mutalith Vortex Beasts for Chaos, they're still +2. This is now +1 for giants. Is it? Do you reckon it's because it's 205 points and it's one of the cheaper monsters you can get on the market?
I think +1 is fair, to be honest, because it's stubborn. It's leadership 10. So if you throw it in against something like, I think it's perfect for knights, for example. You chuck it, you manage to get a charge off on a block of knights, they'll be going to be strength 3 probably, unless they're like in a circle or chaos or whatever. But I mean, general knights, they're going to be wounding it on 6s. It's not going to go anywhere, and it's just going to slowly chew through the unit because it's got a lot of attacks which do damage. That can damage knights down or whatever. Suddenly that unit of knights has vanished. It's a good tar pit when things are anything strength 4 or that are not strength 4, or if you get it in the flank, it can really help. Plus, you get the odd thing where it survives, it yells and balls, and whatever it's fighting runs away and it runs it down. Or it picks up the general and eats him. But
they are very fun. I like it when it's like fighting against like demons or something, and it's like yell and ball, you lose by 2. It's like, oh great, oh now I've popped. Oh, like, I just woke up. So yeah, it is fun.
I think to show that's fair, I think when it was +2, you were thinking about taking 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that probably shows that when you're looking to spam something, it's probably good.
Yeah, that's fair enough. +1 if your army contains 1 or more characters on giant cave squigs.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Azhag, +1.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I like Azhag as well. So.
He's actually appeared in one of our games, hasn't he?
One of the very first ones.
One of the very first ones.
Oh no, it gets ran down by like a spear, and it's like terrible like that.
That's why he's +1 comp.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, something saw that. Like, what in the world is that? I do like him because he can take death, which is kind of cool with Orcs and Goblins, just to mix it up. I understand +1 is 500 something points.
Yeah. Grom the Paunch.
I think you should probably get +2 for this guy because is there no model for him? So I'll just give +2 just because
an old one
impossible to find.
There's a very old model, and he's also on a chariot.
Yeah, he's awful.
So I think, like, you get +1 in the general comp for a character on a chariot, don't you, or on a monster? Yeah. Now, I think he should definitely get +2 because he is awful, like you said, and he's on a chariot, so he should get another +1 for that. So I think...
if he does get a +1 for also being on a chariot, then I think that's probably bad.
Yeah,
if it's +1 and doesn't get the extra +1, then you may as well just take a normal in on a chariot.
Well, Triple Crown guys, please comment. Let us know the actual ruling. That'd be great. Thank you.
I think it does say in the pack that special characters already have that in the consideration for points.
Oh yeah, like Ilariel, for example, doesn't.
Yeah, I think it does say somewhere.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So that Yeah, he should be +2. And everyone knows as well that special characters are usually overpointed for their points cost. Some that aren't, off the top of my head, Festus and Epidemius. You know, like
you're just naming every character that you use.
Ilario. Anyway, keep going. The next two, Gittila the Hunter, he gets the special Wolf Riders, doesn't he? And Snagler Gronspit, he's the
Spider Rider one. Yeah.
They both get +1 each. Thoughts? I think that's fair.
Yeah, they're not that great.
No.
And the bonuses they give to the units aren't spectacular.
No. And it also means as well that to make those units with those bonuses more effective, you have to increase the number of models in the unit. And it's like, I don't want to run 10, 15 Wolf Riders or 10, 15 Spider Riders in one unit. I want to run minimum units of 5 with a musician, and that's it. So, okay then. So that we've gone through the list, gone through the comp scores. What we're going to move on to next after.
What I want to add though,
go on,
is you can take a Wyvern from the Storm of Chaos as a loose Wyvern.
Yeah.
Which I've taken before, and I quite like to do. It's -1. It's just 160 points. You can give it a Fiery Breath upgrade for 20 points, which you can't do to the normal Wyvern. But I just take it just because it's nice to have some mobility that can fly in the Orcs and Goblins. With someone that doesn't take animosity as well, so it can just sort of go off by itself, or cover a flank or something like that.
Well, you know, James, rather than taking -1 for that Wyvern, you can get +1 and take Azhag. And he doesn't suffer animosity either.
Yeah. Or I could take 3 Wyverns because of Azhag.
All right, yeah, it's very good option, the Wyvern.
I think that you should add, just my thoughts on it, is +1 for like units of 4 or 5 stone trolls.
Like the rare stone trolls, like
because you never see them. They're more expensive than the standard troll, and if you take them in units of 5, like Minotaurs and comp, I think it'd be fair to take that, because then obviously it's not only the fact that they're still good at 45 points and the trolls regen and everything, but you're also then eating up the rare points, which in an Orcs and Goblins list is quite a lot of good. So that's why I would maybe put in.
That's a good.
I've never played against stone trolls ever in large units. River trolls, I have played against them because they're -1 to hit, and they're worth taking in that regard, but not stone trolls. I don't see them.
That's a good one. That's actually a good one. What else don't you see? We've already mentioned don't see Arrow Boys. I think like basic goblins. I know it says here that you get +1 for the nasty skulkers, but like I'd just like to see just normal goblins. You never see normal goblins, like unless
but then it's dead easy to get a +2.
Yeah, but I mean, just in my mind, just remove the nasty skulkers and just take goblins. You know, because no one's gonna take. People think, oh well, to get +1 with the goblins, I have to take nasty stalkers. Whereas, like, if you just get +1 for like your first unit of goblins, I think that'd be pretty cool because you just never see them. You can never see them.
Yeah, how many points are they? 3 points each.
Yeah, so it'd be 60
it's like
points.
A blank unit, 60 points, which is the same points as like a unit of Stotlings.
Stotlings, yeah.
They're a lot better than one unit of Stotlings, though, I guess.
But like, I think when everyone knows that I'm a very competitive guy, and when it comes to the army list, I'm all about finding the right average in terms of the negatives and the positives. When we come to the army list, you'll see that Steve's is the most positive you can get. It's like +9, +10. You won't settle for anything less. James is more along the lines of, I hate losing, so I'm going to build a very strong list. And I'm in the middle. And I like to find that balance. But I think I worked out. I think the average, if something is around about 75 points and you get +1, it's good. If it's more than 75 points, if it's more than 100 points, you need to think about it +1. If it's less than 75 points and it's +1 comp, take it. that's my thoughts on it. So that unit of Snotlings, that would be in my Orc and Goblin list. Hello, we're back, and we're going to be going through the army lists now that the guys have used or are thinking of taking based upon their experiences at several tournaments. So, Steve, we're going to be talking about your Goblin army first.
Yes, I took this to Derby. It was quite a while ago now, before lockdown. Ended up in first place with it. Then at that stage, it accorded +9. Now it's at a +8. Points have gone down. +2 +1. And I just want to caveat it. I can't remember 100% exactly what was in the army. So if people are watching who I played and that's not quite what I played. It's as close as what I can remember it to. So if there is the odd little mistake here and there, I do apologise. But I had two lords in my list. Obviously, I had a Skarsnik. This was a mainly night goblin themed army. So I took him for 2 reasons. One, because he's the best night goblin general in the lore and stuff. And secondly, because he's the only night goblin with leadership 8, which really helped. So you're not taking the random goblin Warboss to lead your army because he's got leadership 8 and everything else is night goblins, which I feel that we're doing, I've done in the past. Then he's the man. So I took him, and then my second lord was a night goblin Warboss with the Wizarding hat. That gives you +2 on the comp, and I think it's absolutely brilliant for goblins and orcs. Yes, you get the stupidity or whatever, but having access to the 8 magic laws you don't normally get. He on a basic level 2, he's at 161 points, so he's only 60 odd points more than. Although he has got some armor and stuff. And I don't think there's a single law which orcs and goblins don't really benefit. And I'm thinking about nature spells in each law. Yeah. They're all good,
I think it's a great choice. I think +2 for the Wizarding hat. You stick on a goblin. It's hardly any points, 160, like you said. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's 80 points per comp point, so that's pretty good,
Yeah.
So that hits that points. You're already getting +3 for it being an all goblin army. There's no orcs in there, so right off the bat you're on +5. That's really cool. I think Skarsnik's a really cool choice because of the leadership 8. It's also a very cool model. And I would be interested to hear. We'll talk about this later on, but I'll be interested to hear if his tricksy shenanigans actually affected anyone. I think is it on a 6 or a 1? Their units don't appear.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you now if it did. If not,
go for it. Yeah.
I think in the first game he did nothing. In the second game it was key. I think he delayed a chariot, a demon army. Really helped because it meant I could deal with one part of the army without having something big and scary running for a turn or 2. I think in the third game, didn't really do much. He may have delayed a treb, maybe. I was playing Bretonians, but
that's still no a round of shooting that's gone from that trebuchet, which is great.
But for his point, I mean, he's nearly 300 points, and he hasn't got a ward save or anything like that. So, he's all right in combat, but he will die to anything that's vaguely combat-y.
Yeah, it's the fluff and the leadership 8. That's why you're taking him.
Yeah. I mean, if I was taking a proper unthemed list, I would just stick a Goblin in there because he's leadership 8 anyway, and he's a third of the points.
Yeah.
But I took Skarsnik, so it was mainly Night Goblins I was taking, so it gave me that lead to pay. In the hero section, I had a Night Goblin big boss on a cave squid.
+1.
Yeah, I think he had charm shield, and he may have had a magic weapon, a very small magic weapon. I can't quite remember.
It's anti-spirit host.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I think he had a warrior bane or a biting blade or something like
that.
Yeah. Then I had a basic Night Goblin battle standard bearer, naked. As if he gets into combat, I always think I'm in problems anyway, and I'm probably going to lose. So I don't really keep him very basic. And then I had 2 pretty much naked Night Goblin level 2s. Round off magic. So I had essentially 3 level 2s in the army, which gives me a really strong magic phase, because with the magic mushrooms, you're rolling an extra dice for each spelling cast. So you can really eat up spell dice with those. And then you've got the level 2 on the random laws. So it's good.
The thing is, those Night Goblins, they get the extra mushrooms. I've played against James a lot and his goblins, and it is annoying, right? Because he's like, oh, I'm just going to throw this 1 dice and then this mushroom, and I'm going to cast this really insignificant spell, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to waste dice on that because it's not going to do anything. However, a 1 in 3 chance he's going to steal one of those dispel dice, and now all of a sudden you've only got 3 dispel dice trying to stop his big spell, and it's like, oh, what do I do? Do I stop this little spell, or do I try and save my dice and save it for the big spell? And I'm sure there's odds, and I'm sure people can work it out, but it's those 5 seconds of panic where you're like, I don't know what to do. Right? And I think Goblins causing the little 5 seconds of panic in your opponent's brain, where it's like, I can steal one of your dice. It's like, I hate it. I hate them. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. Well, I think 2 level 2s Night Goblin Shaman is far better than 1 level 4. Because if you roll a 1 on the dice, that's your magic phase gone. So there are going to be the odd magic phase in the first spell you try and cast. You roll a 1 with the magic mushroom, and that's that wizard out of commission. I think it's far better to have 2 of them in case that happens. You're still going to carry on casting than on the turns when you get your level 4, you roll a 1, and that's him done for the entire magic. Plus, I think sneaky stabbing's a reasonable spell. Armor piercing's pretty good. Then I tend to take a lot of squigs. On fit, strength 5 armor piercing, so if you get them in the front. But there are some good Night Goblin little Waaagh spells.
I think they're
not. I think it's a good cheap lore.
Yeah.
If you want to just throw cheap dice at things and try and nick dice, it's really good for that. Like Itchy Nuisance.
Itchy Nuisance is awesome.
Itchy Nuisance.
And then the other one, which lowers your movement and your initiative by D6 as well.
That's issue.
You can just, in a 3 or a 4+, you can make a horde move down to move 1, and then just sit there and shoot it for a whole extra turn.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of Goblin magic. And
then you've got the poison spell. It's good. Quite like Vindictive Gaze. I know it's only 2d6, strength 3, I think, but it's good for wand hunting or shaft removal. So it's got a lot of spells you can throw 1 or 2 dice at, and if you're rolling a mushroom with every spell, kind of suddenly dispel 3 or 4 spells, and you've only used up half your magic pool, and then you've got the rest of it for your wizarding hat guy. Go in and do some real damage.
Yeah, that level 2 wizarding hat guy is going to cast Pit of Shades on some unit or something.
Yeah. I mean, it was in my second game at Derby, I rolled Death, I think, and it's Soul Blight I got.
The
-1 strength, minus toughness.
Yeah.
You cast that on a unit that's already been netted, and suddenly they're -2 strength. Okay? And they're wounding goblins on 5s. It's crazy.
Brilliant. And the goblins are now wounding them on 4s.
Yeah. So I think it combos really well with the other stuff the Orcs and Goblins can bring. A lot of them. Yeah. Again, Wisson's nets. Yeah. So that was my hero section.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I'm obviously on +3 for the Goblins, 2 for the Wizarding Hat, plus another +2 for no Dispel Scroll and no level 3. So I think I'm on +7 at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think for my core, I don't think I have any Spider Riders because I was keeping it Night Goblin only. I think from recollection, I had 2 big blocks of Night Goblin Bowmen.
Yeah.
With 3 Fanatics in each and nets. I think they were at least 40 strong. I can't remember if it was 40 or 50. Then I had a small bunker of 24. They didn't have nets, they just had 2 Fanatics. Lines more than anything. For Skarsnik and the Wizards.
Yeah, it's hide in the back. I'm here for my leadership 8.
Yeah, exactly. And then when things get close, they release the Fanatics through the big blocks, so they pop out just on the other side, waiting for. It was a nice sneaky trick. Then for my specials, I had a battery of 5 spear chuckers because you don't get any for that. So that's 5 bog roads. I had a big squig, a horde of squigs, so 30 squigs, I think 10 Night Goblin. I think they're great. They don't suffer from psychology, so they can operate outside the leadership bubble in general. The Goblins, you really need. So they're a good one to play a little bit further away from the general. And then I had the 2 units of 2 bases. So 2 units of 2 Snotling bases.
That's +9 then, because you get +1 for each of them, right?
Yes, but I'd get a -1 for the Fanatic.
All right, so you're on +8.
Fanatics.
Yeah.
So then I had in the rare, I had a Doomdiver Catapult.
1?
Just 1.
Yeah.
I had a Giant, which was then a +. And then I had 2 Mangler Squigs.
Oh, there's your 2 there's your 2 minuses. There's 2 minuses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also had a Squig Gobba.
Yes. Now, for those who don't know that, the one appeared in James's battle report with myself, which was High Elves versus Orcs and Goblins, and there was a bit where James made it slightly overpowered by not reading its rules, and but those things are really good. I think they're great. I played against someone in Triple Crown a few years ago, and he had 2, and he sat them right in the middle of the board, and he went, because they've only got like a 24-inch range.
Yeah, it's only 24-inch range.
But he's like, I've got a 24-inch bubble here, and it's like anything that goes in this area is gonna get seriously hurt, like kind of thing. So I think they're really good at controlling areas of the board where you don't want the enemy to go, or you're gonna force them into the area and you're gonna pound them to death with them. I think they're really good.
They're a typical Goblin unit. When they work, they can be great.
Yeah.
And when they don't, horrible.
Yeah.
And because
reliable compared to some of the stuff, though.
Yeah. But I mean, they can eat themselves quite badly and quite easily. You're not guaranteed to fire with them every turn, so I found them a bit hit and miss.
Yeah.
But and the only other problem is obviously because they've only got a 24-inch range, you need to put them right at the front. like all the other war machines can hunker back behind you. These ones have to go right at the front. They can be got at a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I think overall, like, look, looking at the army list, I think you've got some obviously you've got the themed elements, you've got night goblins, you've got like no spy riders, you've got squigs, lots of squigs, and then you've got a bit of artillery. And how many artillery pieces? There's like seven artillery pieces.
7, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's got a really good balance for me. And I find this with a lot of orc armies and orc players is it seems quite a defensive army because your only like offensive unit is the squigs. Like nothing's going to be moving forward. Even like the mangler squigs, you're not going to be sending them off to go cause havoc. You're going to be keeping them back.
It's a counter-punch army, yeah. You sit back, you soften up the enemy with your magic and your artillery and your fanatics when they get a bit closer, and then you try and mop up what's left.
And the other thing as well, I think like the most points you've got in a single unit is probably the squigs, right? Like how many points is that squigs unit?
Yeah, 270.
Which is not an awful lot. So
it's if you lose something, it's not the end of the world. You can carry on and still be not 100% effective, but work by losing 1 or 2 major units.
Yeah, and that one comes out at what, like +8, something like that, +8 comp, which is really good.
I think it was +9 when I originally worked it out.
The giant was +2 at that point.
The giant was +2, so I had +3 for goblins. I had the +2 for the wizarding hat, 5, 2 for the magic 7, +8 for the great cave. Then I had +7 for the fanatics, and then went up to 9 for the snotlings. Yeah, and then the giant cancelled out the mango squig, so it was +9 overall.
Yeah, so I think it's really good for +9. I think you're very, we know how good you are at making these plus lists that are still competitive in a way, and I think James, I let James talk about this when he's talking about his army, because his army's at the opposite end of the spectrum. But his army, is obviously a negative. But you're the tournament at Derby, which I was also at, and I didn't win because Steve did. But he +9 tournament points on a one-day event where you've only got 3 games is a lot.
Yeah.
Because you get effectively additional 3 points per game. Whereas at Triple Crown, which is the actual Triple Crown, which is a 2-day event, there's 5 games. So it already shifts. So it's only like +2 per game, which is still good, but it's not, it's not fantastic because you're more likely to run into more competitive lists at a 2-day event than you are in a 1-day event. I think people in a 1-day event are more likely to take softer lists, because Sony can get those pluses. But I think for I think it obviously did very well in the 1-day event, winning. And it is a good list, but I think in a 2-day event, it may struggle toward the end of the tournament, in the last 2 games, maybe the last 3 games. But I still think it's going to do well. What are your thoughts, James? Because you've been to Triple Crown before as well.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant list. And to say it's a soft list is just so wrong. Anything with that many war machines is just... It's an incredibly points efficient, comp efficient list.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're very good at looking at the list and thinking, how can I build it? That's a really strong list for the amount of comp points it is. Because you could end up playing someone who's like, I'm playing a +2, +3 list, and they'll look at yours and you go, that's not +8 or +9 compared to what I've got. So that's where I think it's a really strong list. I think we discussed it before, and I always say that something like, if you're looking to win at a 3-day event and there's 20 players, you could, in theory, have multiple players who are still unbeaten. So then it's actually who's managed to go unbeaten with the highest comp actually wins it. Unless someone's gone unbeaten, but they've only got minimal points for their wins. But at a 5-day event, I think
You mean 5 game
roughly
event rather than 5 days?
Yeah, five.
Yeah.
Yeah, not 5 days.
I couldn't do 5 days.
Oh, you'd love it. Don't lie. But like the odds are there's maybe 1 or 2 people unbeaten.
Yeah.
So, and the person who's taken the very heavy minus comp list, are you able to beat them on your game 4 where you're still unbeaten, but they're still unbeaten? You have to presume someone at that point is a very competent player as well, and they just have an advantage. So actually, the comp difference.
It can deal to. I mean, obviously, it's a +9 list, so it's not going to be. It's going to have its weaknesses, and it does have its weaknesses. And if I take it to a 5-day event, to be honest, I would drop Skarsnik and point extra chaff and them, and just have a Goblin Warlord in there, and maybe even take the a little bit better. But
maybe a Wither.
Yeah.
It has got enough things in there. I mean, I would probably swap the Squig for a rock, just for that 9 one. The 5 Chuckers great at things like Demon Princes, and they're pretty good at any of the big monsters really, because of no armor save and strength 6, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So as soon as they get I'm not moving forward. So as soon as they get within half range, he just on a small, slightly better than average roll. 3 of them at least, I'll get them hitting, and that's not including all the fanatics and mangas that will be spinning out, and the other war machines, Doom Dive and stuff, running in. So it can deal with the fast, heavy hitters like that. And deal to a certain extent with the hordes, in that if, for example, I was up against a massive White Lion horde, for example, then that's where I would fire all my fanatics and manglers towards.
Fire everything!
So, because I think most of the list could deal with a lot of the other stuff. The chuckers and stuff. Hopefully deal with the phoenixes. And usually in lists like that, you've got at least half the army in that one unit, because you'll have a Lariel or a level 4 or whatever, as well as the 500-point unit.
Yeah.
So you've essentially got half the army in one unit. And if it's going through and popping 8 fanatics, that's 16 D6 strength 5 armor piercing hits on the unit.
Yeah.
Whittle it down to next to nothing.
I had that when I used the Alarial Doomstacker, maybe once or twice, and I played against like the Orcs and Goblins army with like the 2 Squig Gobblers, and he had loads of fanatics, and he took 2 units of like Squigs and stuff like that. And it got to the point where I was like, I am going to have to run through hell. I'm going to have to run this unit through hell to get it in there. I have to get it in on his general. I have to cause mass panic. He needs to get in there, right? And I think the difference was, I don't think he was running a level 4 either. He didn't have a Dispel Scroll, so he got his pluses from that. Like, similar to yourself. And I think their weakness is like, if I take Ilariel, I take Lure of High Magic, which means I'm on +5 to cast. The spells are really cheap, and it does not take long to get that ward save really low. It's still a lot of impact hits. It's still strength 5. It's wounded on 2s, but I think being able to, I had a turn where I went, right, I'm going to run through this storm with a 3-up ward save and get in there, and I think that's. Yeah, we're saying that it does have the tools to deal with some of the most competitive lists, but I think that's what makes the most competitive list different to some of the fluffier lists. Is the most competitive lists, they have that tools where their stack can just run through something. You know, no matter what you throw at it, it can just.
I'm not saying it would defeat them. What I'm saying is it might make it
think twice,
bearable for think twice, and bearable for a couple of turns. And if, for example, they haven't managed to whittle down squigs, and I put them in a place where they have to turn and face them and off into the corner of the board, have them flank, then that will be another major thing, because squigs, I think, are amazing for the points. 8 points each, 2 strength 5 weapons attacks at 8 points each. They're only toughness 3 with no arm save, but the fact that they don't suffer psychology means that you can shoot them to death and they'll just keep coming. Against gun lines, you just gun them forward, and whatever manages to get to the end, just chew through whatever it hits.
Yeah, it's they are a really good tool. So, yeah, well, I think it's a good list. I think, you know, we all can agree on that for its point efficiency and comp efficiency. So, very good, and obviously it won the Derby tournament. So, yeah, and that was like a nice, well-run tournament as well. So, look forward to going to that one again. So we'll move on in a moment to James's army after these messages. Bloop 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 bloop. Right. Hey everyone, welcome back. We've gone through Steve's fluffy, soft, Skarsnik-led Goblin army. You know, we've discussed that in the previous thing. The list will be posted down below for you guys to copy and slate at your leisure, because I've seen these army lists put on these forums and stuff like that. Not that I get my army list off forums or anything. And you know, everyone loves talking about them, so feel free to talk about them in the comments. Right, so James, I'm going to call it weathered, tried and tested Orc and Goblin list. Do you want to tell us?
Yeah, well, this is the one I've landed on after playing Orcs and Goblins for a couple of years now, and actually refusing at the start when I started playing Orcs and Goblins to take a gun line, but then just realizing it is just the most points efficient way to do it. So I've actually got a similar list, which is completely the opposite end of the comp. So I've just really lent into kind of what I wanted to take rather than actually trying to be comp efficient. So I'll skim through it now. I'm going to have to read my phone. So I've got Orc Warboss mounted on a board with the other Trickster's Shard, Armour of Destiny, and a Dragonbane gem with a great weapon. Yeah. So he's the general. He's really there for his leadership 9. Dragonbane gem, you'll see why, because he leads the unit of trolls. So if someone goes after them with the fire banner, it means he gets a 2-up ward. He's on a board to keep up Arbor Trickster's Shard, because the trolls don't have a ward save, so it works really well with them. And I've failed Animosities, failed Frenzied, failed so many things so many times. I'm trying to make a more reliable Orcs and Goblins army.
It is the most reliable Orcs and Goblins army you'll ever meet.
Yeah, so it may just question, why do I play an army that's not reliable when I don't like being reliable? Then there's Savage Orc Great Shaman level 4 with Lucky Shrunken Head. You can probably guess where this is going. With Fencer's Blades to help keep him alive. So he kind of stands in the unit of Savage Orcs, which we'll see in a second.
Wait, so
then there's a
weapon skill 10 with what, like 4 attacks?
3 attacks standard. So with his frenzy, he starts with 1 and he's got paired weapons. But then there's the law. There's one of the Orc, the big wild spells. It gives him +3 attacks and +3 strength,
So
which is a remain in play. Yeah, and then if there's more Orcs in combat than there isn't, with his chopper rule, he's actually strength 9, 6 attacks at weapon skill 10.
Does he still get chopper with Fencer's Blades?
Yeah, you get chopper with anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty handy. Yeah, it just Defense's Blades also go from weapon skill 3 to weapon skill 10, which is just it's +7 weapon skill is pretty good. It also just helps keep him alive. So he's toughness 5 with a 5-up ward. So as far as a wizard goes, he's pretty tough to poker down.
Yeah.
Then a Black Orc to quell the animosity of the Savage Orcs. I've ummed and armed with this one. I like Banner of the Eternal Flame on this guy. Reason being, I think regen's really, really strong, and it's quite hard to get it in the list otherwise. I know there's a few items out there, a few units that resist fire, but I find they're few and far between. Yeah. So I think it's worth the risk. And there's enough other stuff in the army that isn't fire triggering ward stuff that I think it's you should normally be alright. Yeah. Then a level 2 Night Goblin with Spell Scroll. I think you needed the Spell Scroll with this list because it's very susceptible to some of the big low initiative.
Like Purple Sun.
I don't like just taking a little while. Yeah, Purple Sun, the one from Lord Shadows hit the shades. Even the one from Lord Metal is pretty nasty. Yeah, so basically just help resist that. Goblin or a wolf, just to be annoying, just a little cowboy runs around, extra blocker. And yeah, that's my heroes there. Yeah, so the reason I always take a Goblin is all the reasons that Steve said. I think the Orc Big War spells are brilliant at the exact right moment. So they've got one which is reroll the hit, which is great if you're in combat. They've got one which buffs your wizard, great if you're in combat. And they've got a teleportation spell, which is obviously great. It's almost, I don't know if there's any other teleportation spells in the game, but to teleport a unit of Savage Orcs behind someone is pretty scary.
There are only 2 other teleportation spells. There's maybe a third. So the ones I can think of is the High Elf one, which is not really a teleportation spell. Walk Between Worlds. That gives them makes them ethereal movement. There's teleportation spell in End Times that Malekith can do, but that's End Times. There's also Volton's End Times one, again, End Times. So yeah, as a teleportation spell, you don't get many, but yeah, it's a good one. The fact that you could just move a big unit of Savage Orcs and go, ah!
Yeah. But the problem with the Orc spells is those are the 4 good spells, and there's another 3 in there which don't do anything from no one ever cast. Oh, there's Foot Orc as well, which is obviously pretty handy, and obviously if it pops off, I think I've done it before to Alan before, it went off 6 times in a row, and just removed his army. Yeah. So it can just win you the game if you get incredibly lucky like that. But then I roll really well. So so yeah, so you take the little bar for the little chip spells, which then can be really handy. If you get the right spells, they can be really helpful. I would actually take a second Night Goblin to, again, Steve's point, he can stop himself casting with the mushroom. I think probably 2 level 2s and a level 4 is not very efficient on points, so stuck with a level 4 and a level 2. Then for core, I've taken the Spider Riders for +1. I've actually taken a banner on them as well to help with the breaking point. And then the rest of the core is 47 Savage Orc Biggins with full command, with 2 hand weapons.
Why is it 47?
Because that rounds my core off to exactly 632, which is as low as I can get it. But yeah, so 47. I've ummed and ahed. Do I take like a smaller unit of them and a Wolf Riders? But I just think that block of Orcs is just so hard to shift. Yeah, it's 552 points. But they pretty much always everything hits them first. So I want to make sure I get as many attacks back as possible. Debate taking them 11 wide sometimes as well. To get as many models into combat as possible. That still leaves you with like 13 or so models they have to kill before you start losing attacks. So yeah, so basically it's a massive block of Savage Orcs there to kind of grind through everything. Yeah. And basically the rest of the army kind of supports that block. So I need to get what's next. Then I've got the same as Steve, but I've got 4 Spear Trackers. Again, they're just there. They're really cheap. They're really efficient, and they can do some great damage. I'm a big fan of Goblin Wolf Chariots because they're so fast with Strength 5 impact hits. Really good for actually defending your war machines. Yeah, really good for defending your war machines. don't take animosity as well, which is great. I like taking units of them, but they become quite immobile in a unit because there's no musician in them.
Yeah.
So as an individual model, they can just kind of pivot on the spot and just be generally helpful. And they're always, impact hits are great because orcs are so slow. You actually get some damage done before people get to move. Then I have a unit of 10 just normal trolls. This is what the general goes in. Basically gives me 2 big blocks of infantry to fight everything with. 350 points for 10 trolls for me is a steal.
It is.
Regen, all those attacks, they get to stomp infantry, and the troll vomit is really helpful. So I'm a big fan of them. Yeah, they're still stupid, but that's why I do take the Warboss to kind of really help up the army's leadership. And being stubborn is really helpful as well. Then I have the lone troll, who's referred to as Trevor, rejected by the rest of the trolls. He's essentially a blocker who just runs up and just gets in the way. A troll blocker is really handy because some not very combat units can't actually deal with him in one turn.
Yeah.
Because he's stubborn, if you keep him within 12, he can get leadership 9, he's got his regen, toughness 4, a relatively small base. He's just generally handy, kind of just get in the way. Then 2 Doom Divers and 2 Rock Lobbers and 1 Squig Gobbler. So really it is a
9
kind of same
pieces of artillery.
That is 9. Yeah, so you can really see the theme when I once upon a time said I'm definitely never going to take just a gun line for orcs.
Yeah.
I've ended up there. Just because after you start playing and you look at the other points for things, it's just quite efficient. So yeah, the whole theme of the list is it doesn't really move forwards. It shoots you, kind of outshoots everyone. But then when you eventually get to it, it's got 2 massive combat units where that's all the points actually is.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good at magic. And then there's a lot of blockers in there. And I'm happy to send chariots in as chaff. The spiders can be chaff. The wolf rider can be chaff. Trolls chaff. So really you can delay someone for 3-4 turns, shoot them down, then use a teleportation spell. You can reposition and then just win with 1 decisive combat.
Yeah.
So again, it's that massive counter punch. It's kind of the style I was going for. And then just my thing around the Gobbler is the Gobbler's so good at killing like cavalry and kind of things like that because it automatically hits. So if it rolls, I can't remember exactly what it rolls, but it's like a 10 and a 16 on 3 dice, that's how many hits it gets. And you just almost just remove the like cavalry unit, remove 1. And it's surprisingly hard to kill in combat, even when you don't cheat and use the wrong rules for it. But no, it's just because it's got a thunder stomp. I think it causes terror. It's got toughness 6 in combat. So again, it's just a difficult thing to deal with.
So what?
Yeah.
What's your overall score with that then?
That's -7. So it's -1 for the orcs, savage orcs, minus another 1 for the shrunken head, -3 for the size of the savage orcs.
Yeah.
-2, it's the 5. Sorry, can't count. For the Doom Divers, -7 for the 2 Rock Lobbers, and -8 for the Black Orcs, and a lovely +1 for the Spiders.
So you get +1 comp.
Yeah, it's only +1 thing in there, and that's because it's not much in it, so I'll probably take it.
You've gone for like the most efficient units in the army list rather than the most, trying to like make it efficient based on comp. And I think, if you compare -7 to +9 or +8 or whatever it is, then it's like, wow, that's like, 16 points. It's a massive swing. But we've already talked about playing against other competitive armies, playing it over a 5-day event, a 5-game event, 5-game event. So I think when you say -7, you're losing 1.4 points per game, and when you can earn 20 points in a game, you're looking at winning every game. Obviously, you need to do that with this kind of army, but I think you and I have found from our experience of attending Triple Crown previously. I've been to a couple. You've been to one, but it's like -5 is like the sweet spot. So the armies that tend to win, I think the first year we went, it was a -7 demons list that went. Don't get me wrong, good player, good demon list. Didn't face any high elves at that tournament, which was really surprising. But so he was quite lucky. But that was a -7 list, and then I think the following year, I think it was like a -6, -5 list again. So I think like if you want to go to let's face it, to win the games, win the tournament, like -5 is around about the sweet spot. That's not to say you can't do it with a plus list. I know that next time I go, I've challenged myself to take a plus list, because I always take negative lists. I always go for things. So, I'm going to try and take a plus list, try and do well. It's not going to be +9. I'm not turning into Steve. But I think, and I think with you, James, when you were looking at it, I think when you were considering the negatives, you're thinking, based upon your history, what kind of armies have you played against at Triple Crown, and why?
So
to your decisions.
Just when I went, first time I went, I took a +4 or +5 comp list. So my first game I played someone else who had a +5, +4 list or so. I won that one quite convincingly. I got my full 20 points. The next game I had to fight High Elves of Valariel with white lines. So instantly, even though I just won my first game and deliberately taken a higher comp list, I was playing someone who just had all the low comp units anyway, with Phoenixes and everything like that. And then I lost that game. And then the game, even though I lost, I ended up playing someone who was -21 on their comp.
Yeah, that guy's a bit infamous in terms of...
Yeah, so I was there just... So it's just like, okay, great. So it seemed to even it up for the first game. I know there's probably a calculation in the background, and maybe I just got lucky from the draw. But I'd taken like Grimgore and just normal Orc boys and kind of things like that to try and kind of pump up my comp. But I just thought after like the first game, it's like, can I actually beat a bunch of steam tanks with this list? Probably not. And then I had to play someone who had 2 steam tanks in the last game. So all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm taking a nice plot. I got 10th in the end out of 40 odd players. So I was pretty happy with that. But in hindsight, if I played the exact same people and took this list, I would have the advantage every game rather than having to outplay someone with like a higher comp list. Obviously didn't get to the top tiers of tables, but looking at those lists there, I don't know if I could have beaten competent generals with what I'd taken. And this is a list I designed to say, I think no matter what you take, I could win if I play it right. And that's the position I want to be in.
Yeah, we did a lot of play testing before the tournament, and it was like, we used like variations of James's Orcs and Goblins against like my high elves, like different variations of my high elves, because I was also trying them out against like my warriors of chaos, and things like that, because those are the kinds of armies, high elves and warriors and demons and dark elves. The armies I play are the kind of armies that you play at a tournament. So you managed, when you adopted like the +4, +5 list, you were like, yeah, it can handle it. Things have to go right for me to handle it. I can't afford for anything to go wrong, because if it goes wrong, it's going to go wrong. I'm not going to be able to pull it back. But with this -7 list, you've gone, right, if I'm really going to compete at the top tables, game 4, game 5, I need to take those negatives. And but you've got caveat, you've got areas in your army where it's like, well, if this doesn't work, I've got this, and if this doesn't work, I've got this, and if this doesn't work, I've got this. Yeah.
Well, I don't. The full safe of the unreliability of the artillery is just take more of them, and then something will eventually hit. And then one rock on a demon prince's head done, one rock on a frost heart done. Enough chaff and enough shots into any unit, you'll eventually get through it.
Yeah.
I guess that's the plan of it anyway. But actually, the interesting thing is, I took a +4, +5. If I played Steve's +8, +9 goblins, he would have wiped the floor with me. So I would have just had to run through all those fanatics. So I think it's about being comp efficient, not necessarily just taking a -5 list, because the guys who are taking those lists that probably win are probably tweaking their lists, probably really thinking about it. What is an efficient points unit for your general points and comp efficient as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, what's your thoughts on James's -7?
To be honest, I think the most efficient Orc and Goblin list you can take is a gunline. I don't think Orcs have the brutal combat efficiency to go toe-to-toe with the elite combat units without whittling them down a bit first. And just with animosity and everything and things going wrong, I think a gunline with magic, especially, I think Little Waaagh works really well with it. Getting that when you're playing a gunline, as you say, reducing a unit down to like movement Warlord gives you another full turn of shooting at it. So yeah, I think it's probably one of the best you can write with the book. Highest level, but it doesn't give away points easily. You've got the two big blocks which are really hard. So you're not really going to lose. You're not going to lose big against anything that doesn't want to engage.
Yeah.
Because with the Orc big guns, they're not going to run off through college or anything frenzied. So you don't have to worry about that. Same with the trolls because they're stupid. So you're going to have to engage them in order to get the points. And so I think it's basically it's probably as strong as you're going to get. I mean, 4 is as good as you're going to get. I mean, obviously people think, oh, this for this, but it'll be minor tweaks around the edges, and it'll be down to personal. But I think the core is basically for my experience. I think gunlines are the best way to do.
Yeah.
I think the main,
and that's why you get +2 for no war machines. You know, because it's like you know, it's and you get minuses for taking multiple war machines. You know, so it's a big swing between the no war machines and everything. And I think, you know, having played against, I've not played against the -7. It frightens me, and I don't like losing. But you know, having played James I know he knows how to use that army, and you know, like looking at it, you know, as a high elf player, as a demon player, you know, I'm looking at it and going, I have to run through hell to then come up against 50 savage orcs and 10 trolls, and I don't want to do that. You know, you have to fight those units at full strength, and you are not going to be full strength when you fight them. I would say it is probably the most dwarven orc army you can possibly face. It's the most reliable gun line in the Orc and Goblin list. You've got 2 animosities, one on the Savage Orcs, which you negate with the Black Orc. You've got one on the Spider Riders, which doesn't mean anything, unless they block a unit from charging or something, which has happened. And then you've got Stupidity on the Trolls, but it's a leadership 9 with a reroll. So, you know, it's a very reliable dwarven orc army, you know.
Well, my dwarven orc army, I think if you wanted to just have a bit more gunline power, it's a 200-point Warboss, which is quite a lot of points for kind of really what he actually contributes. You could take another 2 bolt throwers and another gobbler for that points, and then just use the Savage Orc as the boss, so it drops you to leadership 8. You don't have a hero in the trolls, so they can't really go off by themselves. But it just adds even more into your gun line.
Yeah, but it's like Steve was willing to pay 300 odd points for Leadership 8. I think paying 200 points for Leadership 9 is like pretty good.
Yeah. But there's a big difference there between Leadership 7 and Leadership 8.
You could go really, or you could drop the Warboss, take a banner or discipline on the BSB, and take a Gobbler and 2 extra things to give you 1 extra comp, so you actually be at -8. But that unit would be Leadership 9.
Yeah. So I think there's ways of like tweaking around the edges. You know, some people would argue like Trevor, I think, like 35 points. And I think I've said to you in the past, I'll drop Trevor and take a unit of Snotlings because it's 60 points. Can you find 25 points anywhere? And I know you've looked at it and gone, no, I actually can't find 25 points anywhere because I've spent like the minimum I can on thing. I'd have to drop a bolt thrower. And then it's like, right, well, if I have to drop a bolt thrower and Trevor to get +1 comp, it's like, well, do I really want to do that? Because the Snotlings, they're not great. They get +1 comp for 60 points, which is good, but a bolt thrower and a stubborn regen unit, which is movement 6, is a lot better. And it's like, you know, I think it's very points efficient around the edges.
Yeah, the only probably change I would consider, and I'm not saying I would make it, it's just something I might toy with, is getting a Goblin BSB with the poison banner and making a Savage Orcs bowman.
Yeah, that was another one I played quite a lot. So take 12 wide on there, take the poison banner. It works, but you'd be surprised how often they don't get to shoot for some reason. When everything lines up.
It's not just in firing; it's also in combat. I know you're losing the 10 attacks front row with the extra.
It's really effective. My Goblin army I takes 100 Goblin bowmen with him in that unit. So I like the mass volley fire style. But playing Alan, he just pokes the BSB down. Every time.
You'd have to protect it a fair bit. I think if you got the charge off, you can usually align it so the max. You can either if it's wide enough, you can get him out of combat completely.
Yeah, that's why they're 12 wide against 10
and
wide.
12 wide, then you can
hire them. But if someone charges you and they know what they're doing, they'll just clip him, and because he can't have any magic defense, he's basically stood there with a shield and light armor.
To be perfectly honest, James, I actually can't remember the last time your Savage Orcs charged.
I don't know they ever have.
because honestly, thinking about it, like the last game,
I'd always take another turn worth of shooting.
The last game we played, I think that's it. I think because you've got good line, you sometimes go, I don't want to charge because I want to shoot you some more. Where it's like, oh well, you know, if I do charge, then I get to pick where I charge. And anyway, thank you very much for sharing. The Orcs and Goblins are a great hit. List is down in the description, so feel free to berate it. I'm actually going to call a pause there to this episode because it's a long episode. We've spoken a lot about Orcs and Goblins, so what we'll do is we'll talk about Bretonnians in the next episode, and we can dedicate a whole episode to Bretonnians. I think that'll be a good shout. For those who are on the Warhammer Fantasy Battles Facebook page or the Champions of Destiny Facebook page, you would have seen Steve's halfling Bretonnians gracing the pages. I think you released pictures of the halfling Bretonnians.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, finished ago. Yes.
Yeah, so
that would be a potential list that I might take for
the Triple Crown. Yeah, I think it's you know, pardon the pun, it's a great little army, and it is fun. You know, and it's Bretonnian, so it's another one that you don't see very often. So that will be the next episode. I hope you all enjoyed the podcast. And if you want to send us your army lists to rate and discuss, or ask any questions about how it can be improved, just, you know, if you send your army list to toysoldiertales@gmail.com. I'll have a look at them. I'll share them with the guys, and we'll have a look. and you tell us what models you've got as well that maybe that aren't in the army list, that are on the painting station. So we can take that into consideration rather than us saying, go out and buy Azhag, try and find him, he's 60 quid on eBay, rather than saying that, we can say, well, based upon the models you've got, this is what we take, just tweet this here, tweet this there. So feel free to send your army lists, we'll love to see it. But the next episode coming out soon will be Bretonnians. So yeah, thank you very much, James. Thank you, Steve.
No problem.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You don't want to plug anything whilst you're here, right?
No,
I don't have anything to plug. You've never tried.
Okay then. So thank you very much, folks. Please subscribe and like and share. We're now at the recording of this, I think we're on 230 subscribers, which is really great. Thank you, appreciate it. And some of our videos are getting over 1,000 views for some of the battle reports, which is fantastic. So we're here to keep the community going. We love Warhammer. We love the community, and we want to keep it going. So thank you very much, and we'll see you all soon.